Well, it's hard to believe that's over a decade old now.
Yeah, that was fancy. That was nice.
Yeah.
And yeah, that's very crazy. Like when I started doing stuff, it was like I was doing 10-year anniversaries of things I was in high school for, and now 10 years of the album I put out to start the label is very crazy to think about.
Yeah, I guess that's as good of a place as any to start for people maybe who aren't familiar with you, which this is Ross Shotland, who is owner and founder and all those things. Also a client probably to a degree
Yeah.
of Enjoy the Ride Records and Enjoy the Enjoy the Tunes? Is that how it goes?
Yep.
Okay.
That is the sub-label.
And yeah, I met Ross digitally. I think this is the first time we've actually spoken face to face, but many years ago when the Harvard put out the Inevitable I actually had the guys stay here on a tour they were doing, and got to hear some stories about how, because I was like, man, your guys' vinyl and variants are just so cool, like better than anything I've really ever seen, especially what was the EVR that put it out?
The second record they put out. The first record was just us.
Okay. I think at that point they had been signed to EVR, but they hadn't put anything out yet.
So was that? Do you remember?
What was that?
Do you remember which tour that was?
The one I ended up doing was them, and it was, what was their old name? Daylight.
Okay, yeah. That was, they were signed at that point. I think it might have been before the record came out or around before it came out. But yeah, they were definitely signed.
I think Cardboard Houses, that 7-inch, I think had just come out.
That makes sense. So yeah, the record was probably gonna come out soon, I would guess.
But it was interesting because I was like, man, I've never seen vinyl like that. It has like this much attention to detail between like the album artwork and the packaging and just everything about it. And they're like, oh yeah, it's this guy that, found us or whatever and put out our first record and so on and so forth. And then I started following you. And I think I had made my first contact with you personally once you decided to re-release the first Korn record.
Right.
And I was like, Ross, I need one of those test presses.
So yeah, go ahead and say what happened to that test press.
Oh yeah, Dan has it currently because shit, has it been over a year at this point?
Yeah,
2?
I have it over there.
But basically, Dan was going to go to this thing called the Rockin' Pod, which is basically a podcaster's like convention kind of thing where a whole bunch of people go. But there's also like record swap meets and so on and so forth. And was one of those things like Head was supposed to be there, so I was like, hey, I'm going to send you this record. Please get it signed, because that's what I'm trying to do is get everyone to sign it, and then I'm going to frame it.
That'd be amazing.
And then he didn't go. Head didn't end up going. So then Dan's just been sitting on the test press since.
Literally sitting on it right now.
What was funny though is, and I said in the trailers and so forth of leading up to this, I said I would tell this story. So Ross, I hit up Ross, and finally he goes, okay, so. We figured out the test press situation. I think you said you had like 1 or 2 of each of the silver and the gold. Which one did I want? I said the gold. And you go, okay, that's good. Those are the approved ones. So a little bit of backstory on that. And then you were like, here's the amount for it. And I was like, okay. I had the money, just got taxes. So I like PayPal'd it over to him. And apparently somehow my wife was attached to the account I used or something. And then so like this is 6:30 in the morning or something like that. And she goes, did you just spend X amount of hundreds of dollars on this thing? And I was like, and I just kind of said there, she's like, what did you buy for that? And I was like, she goes, did you buy that Korn test press? I was like, yeah. She goes, and I was like, it's going to be worth so much someday.
Oh, not when I get done with it, it won't.
Yeah. Well,
I'm kidding, man. I basically got it in a cryogenic chamber. It's good. Not too cold. Not too hot.
So how did you end up starting the label?
Well, I always wanted to run a label. Basically, since I got into like independent music, which was in high school, which was like 2000, 2001, around there. And I went to school for my parents. We're hoping I would kind of grow out of it and just get a normal business job. So I went to Buffalo to normal business school, and then I decided to minor in music business, and kind of take a bunch of classes online at like Berkeley School of Music and NYU. I took over the summer. So yeah, I always kind of wanted to do this ideally, not really knowing how I would figure it out. And then I interned at Sony also when I was in college. So that kind of set me up a little bit, and kind of, to be honest, in the corporate world, even though ironically I deal with so many corporations currently from licensing and stuff, but I don't really work for them, so it's fine. But yeah, I always wanted to open a label. and just kind of as soon as I graduated college, I started looking for bands, and which I guess leads us into Harvard. Harvard, I want to sign 2 bands. I want to sign one like more poppy, pop punk, pop rock kind of band, and one more cult following. Glassjaw is one of my favorite bands, so I got a kind of band like that. Circus Survive, Glassjaw, something that would take a while to get a following, but the people that would find them would love them, and they would be lifelong fans, and that kind of thing. Which ended up being Harvard, and the second band I just never ended up happening, and just spent too much time, money, and effort on Harvard, which ended up obviously working out in the long run. But I found Jesse in college, ironically, through a Glass band site, through his old band, Defending Brooklyn. They were like the band of the month on some Glassjaw fan site at the time, and I just kind of always kept tabs, thought he was super talented, and then as soon as I was ready to do it, I spent a year looking for a lot of different bands, especially the popular band, but always kept them in the back of my mind, and went down to North Carolina, showcased them, and kind of the rest is history. We hit it off, and that was it.
So you were involved with Harvard like around the time of Animals, even like when the band kind of first started. Okay.
Yeah, I think they put out a small run of Animals on CD themselves, and then when I found them, they had no physical music available at shows or anything. And I was like, that's ridiculous. You guys should definitely have something available to sell to people who like you, to remember you, and whatever. So we did a very small, I don't even remember how many, couple hundred maybe, another run of CDs that were like totally different artwork, screen printed, like the whole deal. But yeah, and then at that point they were writing for what became The Inevitable Night. So I remember the showcase, they played Ghost, and they played one other song. He didn't write French Girls yet. He wrote French Girls very soon after that. I remember like we were talking a lot after the showcase, and he's like, "Oh, I taught myself trumpet, and I wrote this song."
That story is so crazy.
Yeah, I remember that. I think there were a couple songs. Mr. Teeth, maybe, I think they played at the.
Yeah, I think I remember talking to Jason, because I think Jason was more of the one I kind of hit it off with, especially dealing with him in the booking of everything.
Yeah.
And so kind of getting the story from them a little bit. But yeah, because I think there was just a lot of different sounds and textures on that. And I was like stoked on the band. A friend of mine told me to go see them when they were on some tour, like literally playing a bar. Like it's just like I could walk there in like 10 minutes from my house currently. And was a thing where he was like, dude, you got to see this band. They're kind of like Glassjaw, sort of like their intensity and just like their vibe, but like sort of like Circus. It's funny you're mentioning all these bands that like my friend was like, it's like this, but it's like this and it's like this.
Right.
I was like, okay, I have no idea what I'm gonna go see, because like Circa and Glassjaw aren't necessarily the same at all, but they sort of are. There's tendencies that are similar.
People that would like Glassjaw, and I see it though. Like it's not a direct comparison, and it shouldn't be.
No. But it was one of those things where I went to go see him, and there was like a handful of people. There's actually a video that I usually post every now and again from that show where there was like maybe like 10 or 15 of us. And I was just like, what the fuck? Like Jesse's wearing a weird, creepy like mask thing. And,
was that the 2010 tour with Lights Resolve and
yeah, that sounds about right.
Who's the other band? Wow, it's terrible.
It's terrible we can't remember something from 10 plus years ago, a tour.
Empires. That was
okay.
It.
Yeah.
Empires, their band. I knew it was one word. But yeah, Jesse. I loved. I was on like a week of that tour. I met up with them in North Carolina, and then they drove me up back to New York, and they stayed with me for like a week, and we did a bunch of stuff in New York. Mm-hmm. But that was I really enjoyed that era with the mask. It was quite
Jason with his long ass hair.
Yeah, it's quite fucking interesting. But yeah, and then somehow McTiernan was interested, and we kind of lucked out there, and that was part of why I ended up signing a second band. McTiernan was a little more than I was really planning to spend, but I couldn't pass up an opportunity like that. Movie Life's also one of my favorite records, and he produced all their shit, and Thrice, like he's the fucking man, and the fact that he was even interested and willing to cut us a deal was, we couldn't really pass that up. Would have always regretted not knowing how the record could have came out,
Something, and then I'll kind of pose this to Dan as well. I think we're all roughly around the same age. The time of you starting this label, records were kind of somewhat on the upswing, but they also weren't at the same time. Like I know Hot Topic had a large inventory of records, but like you weren't really finding them at shows as much. And out and about, like other than going to like a mom and pop record store, you weren't seeing.
At this point, when I started the label, I wasn't even like, I was very into vinyl, but I wasn't planning on making vinyl at this point.
Okay.
I didn't start making vinyl until the first vinyl release was summer of 2010.
Okay.
And the Harvard, for context, The Inevitable Lie came out December of 2009. That was like, a year into signing them, and we had to get the record recorded and then mixed, mastered, and pressed and out on CD pressed and whatever, the whole ordeal, and some sort of marketing or attempting to get the word out about them, which in my experience, word of mouth and works a lot better than paid marketing and shoving shit down people's throat, at least in our generation. And
yes.
The generation to come is going to only be worse, I'm sure, in terms of just whatever blacking out shit that they don't want to pay attention to. But yeah, I forgot where I was going with this. Oh yeah, I wasn't doing vinyl originally. I wanted to, and I was buying vinyl. That was kind of how I got into vinyl, really. And the whole industry. So I started the label. I graduated college in 2007, and I was in a car. I was managing my friend's band, and we were in the studio putting out an EP. And coming back from the studio, we got into a car accident, which got me, which I like really screwed up my hand. I like tore a bunch of ligaments and got some sort of money from the lawsuit, which really funded the label. But the original amount I had was less than it would pay. It cost to fucking get McTiernan alone, let alone making anything else. And the band needed money just to exist at that point.
Oh yeah.
Granted, it wasn't a ton of money, but it was enough to, I guess, get me by and enjoy the ride semi a pun on the car accident situation and whatnot. But
worth it. Yeah.
Yeah. But at that point, it was 2007. Like that was when the height of downloading and the economy crashed. So anything that people didn't need to spend money on, they weren't. So music, if you could get it for free, most people could, and most people did. So I even remember McTiernan saying in the studio, like, just out of curiosity, dude, like, what would possess somebody to start a record label in 2008? And I was like, semi-speechless, but like, I'm like, honestly, like, it's what I always wanted to do. And like, if I didn't do it now when I didn't have whatever the responsibilities I have, then I would have never done it. And I don't know, everything is right place, right time, because vinyl came back right when, whatever, a couple of years into doing it. And if I had, let's say, not gone to college and just like went right into the music industry, vinyl wouldn't have been a market when that happened. And if I waited longer, then like everything is right place, right time, especially the entertainment industry. But I don't know, life is right place, right time. And especially with this, like, I don't know, like people are like, you're like, you got lucky with this shit. And like, it's opportunity meets preparation, honestly. Like I was really into vinyl and I knew people in the industry and interned and did various shit, and everything kind of came together at the right time, essentially. But going back, yeah, I wasn't really planning to do vinyl. It really just kind of happened that I was really into buying vinyl and noticed a lot of shit I wanted to buy didn't exist on vinyl.
Yeah.
Then what's his name? A label put out Blink-182 self-titled and Dude Ranch and Enema for the first time. This was probably 2009, maybe 2008. And like, it was a random label I'd never heard of. It wasn't, Universal. And I was like, who the fuck is this? How is that possible? And I looked into it and I'm like, oh, you could. It was a lot easier back then. Like now you can't really get out of Blink-182 record so easily. But back then I was like this kid's around my age. Like he went to NYU. Like we knew a bunch of the same people. Like, and then Brent from Juliana Theory happened to randomly tweet. So the first vinyl release we did was Music from Another Room EP, their B-side EP, which at the time was a huge deal. Like I grew up loving Juliana Theory, so being associated with anything with that name was awesome, even though it was the B-side EP, which now doesn't sound so great. But that was in conjunction with their farewell tour, I believe. I don't remember if it was a reunion or farewell tour. It was 2010. But regardless, he put out like a tweet, like, I think it's time for some more Juliana Theory vinyl. Anyone out there interested? And it's whatever. It's kind of happened.
It's like, yeah, it's the perfect storm, because I think up to that point, because I always joke that vinyl never really went away in the sense that the people that collected it and loved it before always collected it. But I feel like there was definitely a period, especially in the, probably from like early 90s all the way up until, about 2010, 2011.
Yep.
Where if it did exist, it existed only as a novelty, and it wasn't good quality, really. A lot of these labels, they put it out on vinyl in a limited run just for people to hang up on their walls and stuff. Because if you listen to the quality of some of that stuff that came out in in the late 90s, early 2000s, even if they pressed it to a record, it was like still the 320k MP3 version. So the mixing was always really, really bad. And I think that's around the time that I started getting into vinyl, was probably like 2012, 2013, sometime around there, because the stuff was actually starting to sound good, and it had kind of broken out of people just thinking of it as just a novelty item. And then you had people that were actually like actively collecting.
Yeah, like the market really grew, like honestly, a lot more than I expected over the last decade. Like originally, I definitely thought it would be more. I knew X amount of people, for example, like something corporate. Like in my head, I knew there's 2,000 people who want this on vinyl. It's just a matter of being able to find them and figuring out the logistics of that. Yeah.
What here's I guess a fun question. What I guess Dan and I probably started collecting records well after you did, Ross. But what are some of the first records that everyone had gotten? We'll start with Ross. What is one of the first records you got to start your collection?
For some reason, I always thought vinyl was interesting. Like I remember even in high school, I had CDRs that looked like records because I thought it was cool, and I was going to burn like my older shit that came out on vinyl, like 70s and 80s shit on those. I remember that particularly. But I started buying vinyl high school, ironically, to get like B-sides and stuff, because like that was, I guess, the marketing ploy, at least for the smarter labels. Victory did that, as did Iodine, which was Brand New's label. Brand New put out vinyl through them, and they had a B-side exclusive on their vinyl as they Taking Back Sunday, and I was obsessed with both those bands and wanted as much content as I could. So those were the first records I bought. And Brand New was on white vinyl, which like at the time I didn't even know color vinyl existed, and I remember like thinking that was fucking crazy that it was on white vinyl, while now it's on God knows what. But yeah, and then from there I just kind of started buying shit on eBay, but didn't really buy anything during college, which was like 03 to 07, just because I didn't have a turntable, didn't have space, didn't really even have anywhere to ship them. And then when I got back from college, which was 07, I kind of started digging in, and that was when I realized some stuff was on vinyl that I was into, but really a lot wasn't. So at the time, I was trying to kind of get everything I could that was relevant to my tastes, which obviously now is beyond impossible. But at the time, it was seemingly reasonable, or seemingly possible at least.
Dan, what was one of your first records?
The very first one that I bought, and this actually goes relatively far back, before the time we're talking about, and that was it was like a Mudvayne vinyl it was like a 7-inch, and it had Not Falling on one side.
I actually had it from Hot Topic.
Yeah. It's like red, clear red.
Yep, I had that.
It's got like a live version of Prod on the B side, and I thought that was so cool. And like I had records before that, but they were just like my dad's records, so it's like Johnny Cash records and Led Zeppelin records and stuff like that. But I don't think I really got seriously into collecting until a buddy of mine bought me for my birthday a couple years later. He bought me like the Nightmare Before Christmas soundtrack on vinyl. Yeah, it was like a double picture disc. It sounded like crap. I'm not sure, but that was also like a Hot Topic thing. But then once I got seriously into like, I think I'm going to buy some vinyl records. I bought two. I bought Brand New's Deja Intendu, and then I got In Flames, The Jester Race. So it definitely, like, those records are pretty indicative of how much of a spectrum my musical taste can be in, as far as like swinging one way or the other. But yeah, that was those were the first, and it's kind of been like I went through a period after that of the next 5 years, just basically every record that I had that I loved, I wanted to get on vinyl. I didn't necessarily want to have every record ever on vinyl. But now that it's a few years later, I mean, I'm like, yeah, I mean, I could maybe try to get every record ever on vinyl, but we're gonna have to start, doing some serious hardcore advertising on the podcast before that happens.
No surprise for me. It was finding the Big Dirty at Hot Topic. It was on a clearance for some reason at the store I was at.
Really?
Stuff on clearance that now are like hundreds of dollars.
Yeah.
Dude, I have that like poop brown variant that like I didn't realize until I was in like the Eats It Facebook group that people were like, I need the Big Dirty. It's out of print, especially that variant. And I was like, I have a copy. But like it was crazy to see how much it was going for in general for a while. And that was kind of like one of those things, like sort of like what you were saying earlier, Ross. Like I had it. I didn't have a record player and I just kind of displayed it because I thought it was, I liked the record, I liked the band, and it was cool. And then after meeting my wife, I think I had a Deftones record too. I just don't remember which one. But it was a thing of hanging out with her. She had a record player, but like no real records, that were new per se. I think it was White Pony, actually, now that I think about it. And was a thing where we just started listening to records because, neither of us had cable really and didn't really have a whole lot of money to go do shit. So we just sit around and listen to records and bullshit. And one of the first times I remember being excited about a new record coming out was when Kanye's My Beautiful Dark Twisted Fantasy was getting ready to come out, and that trailer movie thing he put out. Yeah. And I remember sitting in her apartment and we were watching that like 40-minute video, and I was like, holy shit, I'm so excited for this fucking record. And as soon as it came out, like I think we went in halvesies on it because it was like a giant fucking album.
Things he actually has on of the later stuff. That's I think the last new thing he put out. But yeah, the record. Well,
indirectly, he's definitely been getting ahead of that trend where he's been pre-releasing his stuff. Like Jesus is King. Right. I just got Jesus is King. The whatever that
is not or. I just only really care about users at this point. So
very true. But yeah, that was one of the first times, basically since I've been with my wife, like that's been when I really got into vinyl collecting. Cause like we would be interested in getting records. And, I remember like she had this Throwdown record and she's like, yeah, I found it at a, record store for real cheap. And someone fucking wrote all over it. And then one day I was like, that's Dave Peters. Dave Peters, the singer of Throwdown, fucking signed this record and you bought it for $5 at a record store.
Yeah, he ruined it, man. He wrote all over it. Oh,
I guess that's a fun thing. What is in vinyl collecting and all that kind of stuff? What is something that you found that you're just like, holy shit, I can't believe I found this just out in the open?
That's a good question. I do most of my shopping online, but there's definitely been some stuff in the wild. I can't think of anything on top of my head.
I guess we'll throw it to Dan. If Dan's got anything, give you a couple more minutes.
Yeah. So I've got this is actually funny. So this is also at Rockin' Pod. It was like nothing but like podcasters and then like vinyl sellers, and so it took about 2 or 3 hours to get through everything. And so and like a lot of these guys were like really trying to rip people off because like obviously like they had like the Rage Against the Machine self-titled for like $150 like up on a display or whatever. Well, I pull out like actual like Def Jam versions of like original pressings of Slayer's Rain and Blood and Hell Awaits and South of Heaven. So like the unholy trinity of like Slayer albums, $15 each. So I just snatched them up and kind of like walked off or whatever. So whenever I came back the next year, and I was talking to the vinyl seller or whatever, and I was like, yeah, man, I bought these 3 Slayer records from you. And he's like, oh yeah. He's like, so what'd you think of the remasters? And I was like, what do you mean? He goes, oh, those were remastered. And I was like, no, they weren't. And he was like, what do you mean? I was like, those were original pressings, dude. And he was all like, oh my God. He was like, oh my God, really? And I'm like, yeah, man. I was like, I'm not saying it to be a jerk or anything. I just like, That's, I mean, obviously I brought it up, so I'm a jerk, but like it was one of those like really awkward situations. And then so he's like, yeah, I noticed as I was kind of walking off, he was like telling people, he's like, yeah, if you guys need help on anything, just let me take a look at the record and I'll get you a good price on it. He's telling everybody that. So like, it just makes me wonder what else he had in there. He also told me, what was it? It was at the Drive-In's Acrobatic Tenement for, I think it was like $10. It's not like a super rare record, but I was happy to add it to the collection for sure.
Okay, so I got a few. I remember I got again Hot Topic clearance. Manson, Antichrist Superstar.
Oh, you lucky bastard!
Like $10 or something. That was 2009, but still, like that record, like things used to sit there for years. Like I remember not getting a copy of first pressing of Deja because like the barcode had a rip or something, and I was trying to get like a couple bucks off. She was like, nah. And then a couple years later, that was like $200 record. I'm not sure now because they repressed it since, but they're probably still stupid high. That brand new record that I mentioned before, that was in store and like a random thing, which was Your Favorite Weapon first pressing, but that was again 2000 when it was out. And when I first started like trying to like right after college when I got really into vinyl, I got all the Zeppelin albums in like one shot for like $40 from a used record store, which now they're like 30, 40 each. But it was like a new place that just opened, which is still in business actually. But the guy just didn't really know what he was pricing. And plus this was again 2007, 2008. So the market was way different. But yeah, those are some things that came to mind.
John's going to pull out something crazy, I'm sure.
I do have a couple that are like not crazy, but were you're just like, wow, I haven't seen that. I remember going to up north to Traverse City and finding a copy of Mère des Noms, which at that point I hadn't seen one in a store ever. And so I picked it up, and mutual friend of Ross and I's, Austin Keene, I posted it. I was like, oh my God, I love this record. I didn't even know it was pressed, let alone that I would be able to find one. Cause at that point, I think it was like a good solid almost 10 years old at that point. And he was like, hey, if they got another copy, pick it up for me. And I was like, no, they don't. It's just this one. And he was making some posters for me. And I was like, tell you what, I'll basically trade you the posters for this record. And he was like, deal. I was like, all right. And I was like real bummed. Like I went from being really elated that I had this record that I really loved to then being like, well, I guess I'm getting something for free. And, I at least I know this exists, so I can try to find another copy down the road. And then we went back to that same record store maybe like 4 months later, and they had another copy. So I picked up that in 13th Step, which was kind of a like, wow, I can't believe I found that. Going to, again, Hot Topic. Hot Topic was a great place to find records.
Travis Fire was the man. He left like 2015 or so.
Yeah.
He was so great at his job. And honestly, I owe him a lot, which I told him when he left, which he was very humble and was like it was all you, dude. Like, but he gave me a shot and really like early on, they took an exclusive color, which kind of minimized my risk and made me be able to, move forward and not lay out a ton of money, not knowing if I was going to ever get it back. And he really did me a solid. But yeah, he was great and curated a fucking fantastic catalog of shit for that 5-7 year period or whatever he was working there.
Yeah, we were in, God, I don't remember. I think we were somewhere out. Actually, might have been when I was down in the Carolinas, actually. And I found a copy of The Great Misdirect for $7 on clearance.
Oh, that's cool.
And then when I needed to buy my car, I turned around and sold that thing for a shitload of money. And then another really great find at a Hot Topic was Head Automatica's Decadence. And that was like one when I walked by, I was like, holy shit. And then they happened to have Deftones Around the Fur as well. So those were the two records we picked up there.
Nice.
That's cool.
Does anyone have a favorite bootleg? I know that's kind of something that's been keeping the industry afloat as well, like the random bootlegs, especially in the hip hop scene, more so than I would say mainstream, rock or anything like that.
Well, going back to Kanye, my like top White Whale record for at this point over 5 years is Kanye Late Orchestration, the Abbey Road. concert that he did. There's like a very rare German pressing or whatever, and they just made a bootleg of that I was to get, which generally I try not supporting the bootleg situation, but
that's pretty much all my Kanye is all bootlegs.
Yeah, like Yeezus is one of my favorite records of all time. So like I got one of those. Most of my bootlegs are Kanye because like I've been trying to license Graduation since day one of the fucking label. Since the first time I started working with Universal, that was one of the first things I brought up. They're basically like, if we're gonna do it, we'll surely do it ourselves. I'm like, all right, you still haven't though.
I thought they did.
Graduation is a bootleg.
Is it? The what? Even like selling it at FYE and stuff? No, sorry, you're right. Graduation. Never mind. Wrong one.
The purple cover, right? With him.
Yeah, that's the one I have is the purple one.
Yeah, those are bootlegs, unfortunately.
Yeah, I mean, that's the one thing that's been interesting about at least like the hip hop bootlegs is that like they do them in such like crazy awesome colors that I'm like, why now that they're pressing stuff, it's like legitimately on their own. It's like, why won't they do that legitimately?
To be honest, it's very hard to figure out the logic with a lot of these larger companies and why they do and don't do certain things at this point. For Kanye, I would guess he probably has contract stipulations and either does or doesn't want things done. Because like Dark Twisted Fantasy, like you said, was done really well and had a ton of attention to detail. So I don't know. I wish I did.
This is one of my I bought Bridget these for I think her birthday one year. But what was crazy is like these didn't come out. Now they are. But the Beyonce Lemonade bootleg. Right. And I was so pissed because like I found someone who was selling it when one of the sites that no longer acknowledges bootlegs and allows you to buy and sell them.
Right.
They shall remain nameless. But basically I found someone who was selling one and they were like, oh, it's the rare pink one or whatever. And I was like, yo, I'll buy that. Get it. And it's not. It's like the lemonade colored one, like the off yellowish kind of clear variant. And I was like, dude, this is not that. And he goes, oh, I never said it was. I was like, yes, it is. And I sent him a screenshot of like my receipt of like from the store where it says it's this variant. And I was like, you took me for probably an extra $80 off of that because it was like out of 150 pressed or something like that. Like you kind of fucked me on that. And the other one, which this was so hard to find, and I was so pissed when it came, and it was like not in the greatest condition, unlike what it said it was the Drake and Nothing Was the Same.
Right.
And the dude that I bought it from was like, yeah, like it's good condition, blah, 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 blah. And then I get it, and it's like bent to shit and all that kind of stuff. And I was like, dude, that fucking sucks for as much as I spent on it. But like
everybody has different definitions of what good means.
Well, he said it was mint.
Oh, well, mint's a different story.
Yes. So I was not too stoked when I bought that, and that's how it showed up. But it was, again, like out of 125 or less than 150, I think, or less than 200. And the only way I could find it was finding people who had tagged it on Instagram and then started emailing or messaging them and being like, hey, do you have a copy for sale? Or do you have a link to a copy for sale? Like, I'm trying to find one. So that took me a solid like 2 to 3 weeks of messaging random people and being like, hey, do you have a copy for sale?
Yeah.
But those are two fun like bootlegs that I've kind of tracked down. Maybe the Watch the Throne is one of my other ones that I got while I was out in Seattle.
Yeah, I have a regular copy, and I got a bootleg because opening the real copy is a whole ordeal, and obviously it's fucking expensive. And
did you get that big, giant, like thick, like box looking one?
Every which way, and to get the records out, you have to like go like underneath, and like it's a whole thing. So I bought a bootleg to actually listen to.
That's cool.
Plus, it's a picture disc, and it's just their face on both sides. Like, doesn't say side A, B, C, or D. So you just have to either look in the dead wax or just figure it out. And two sides look the same because there's only two faces and four sides. I just don't understand why the fuck they would do that, especially if you're charging $125. Like,
right,
you make it on normal vinyl or like some sort of creativity.
Right. Dan, you got any bootlegs that you?
Well, I can't mention
I found
one.
These Hello Waits bootlegs.
Yeah, right. No, actually, yes, but that's okay. This is kind of weird. So this is not vinyl. This is cassette, right?
Cassettes.
Yeah, just a little bit.
Okay.
Just a couple times. I've heard rumors.
I have one or two, but I have a couple.
Well, I bought I bought a whole bunch of tapes from a guy at a garage sale one time. It was like 400 cassettes. And I opened them all up and they all looked kind of the same. It was like okay, so like imagine you've got like Metallica's Kill 'Em All, right? And the cover artwork is like only half of the like it's only like half of the picture, right? And then the other half is like this weird like white overlay. So I got like 400 tapes like this, and they're all Polish bootlegs, right? But it's like all of like really good stuff. Some like insane, like it's got like all the thrash metal from the 80s and 90s. It's got, like Death Angel, Metallica, Megadeth, Slayer, Overkill, Creator, Sodom, like you name it. It's all in there. And then there's a whole bunch of early 90s death metal. So like Obituary and Morgoth and like Crematory and like all this stuff. And like tons of Cannibal Corpse records. Like it's like everything. It's a treasure trove. But it's all put out by this label called MG in Poland that just basically their entire business was putting out bootleg cassette tapes. So like they basically would just make a copy and then mass manufacture that. And then that was how they did their business. And so I've got all these tapes or whatever. I can't ever do anything with them. So I just listen to them. And I hate to say it, but the quality is like incredible for what it is. Some of them were still sealed. The guy's like, yeah, my son was like really into like metal and stuff. So this guy's son must have like just sat there for years, importing Polish bootlegs. It's just the weirdest thing.
Speaking of bootlegs, I was tagged in and Harvard. Somebody made Harvard 8-tracks.
Oh wow!
Oh cool.
So he tagged me in them, and then. Wow. I was like, "What the fuck?" And that, like, it actually has the music on there.
Does it really?
Supposedly, like, he played me a video of him playing on his 8-track player. I don't have one, obviously.
Yeah.
How do you make an 8-track? Like, what?
Not sure. When we do, we're planning on doing a 10-year anniversary of from the Birdcage. Yeah. So when we do that, I might do a small run of 8 tracks.
Yeah.
I guess I can, and I don't know. It's a really interesting little. I don't know. This company,
it looks cool.
Emo Cow Records, but yeah.
So the Inevitable and I is on 2 separate 8-tracks. Then I would assume.
No,
or are those just different variants?
That's one 8-track. I don't know.
Oh well, you had the that, and then you had a red one. So I thought maybe they were.
The red one is the Interpretations EP.
Oh, okay.
Right. Yeah, it's all their records. It's including the 7-inch, which I don't really know why.
That's wild. Like that's just wild. I don't know.
Wow.
I mean, how do you find? I mean, you have to find like a plant or something, right? Like I don't.
I think it's just the guy who buys blank ones and dubs them or something. Like these are colored also. Like
wow.
Signalized blue. The Interpretations is red. I don't know. It's wild though. Something I never thought I'd fucking see. That's for damn sure.
I want to get an 8-track player.
I guess that's an interesting question. Are you surprised all these years later how rabid of the fandom of the Harvard stuff is still?
Yeah, no. It's very they at the worst time, honestly. Like they were finally on the cusp of getting where we at least somewhere. Like getting notoriety. They just got off that Say Anything tour, which was their first like whatever 1,000 cap, 500 to 1,000 cap
room, yeah.
And as you know, they were fucking great live, and I think that was a lot of the key is that they're a weird band, but like either you got them or you didn't. And if you saw them live, the more people that were exposed to the crazy show, they'd recruit people, and they just really needed to get in front of people's eyes and ears, I guess. And so yeah, I don't really know. I'm upset that it didn't happen when it should have happened. And it's very gratifying the fact that I took literally all the money I had in the world and threw it into this band and then into doing 500 copies of Juliana Theory on vinyl. So the fact that I was also very fortunate that Equal Vision got involved, and I'm well aware of that. It was a lot of that definitely helped in getting them notoriety, but yeah, I don't know. part of me wants to say that I expect them to be bigger, and part of me, I don't know. It goes both ways. It's really hard to say.
One of my last Harvard stories I'll tell, and then we'll kind of move on to the subsidiary label you started, is so the first show that I had booked them on, they were staying with me, and I remember, they were staying, I think they stayed like 2 days with us, and someone was going through my records, and because it was at that point,
Lee was the final guy. I would assume it was Lee.
Well, so here's the fun thing. So it was the God. How did this happen? So it was the first time I brought him through, and it was like the Sugar Glider, them, and Junior Astronomers.
Yeah, that's the most Harvard tour I can imagine. That's the band that they talk about constantly.
Yeah. And I remember Jason being mad that I put Junior Astronomers on first. Because he's like, "Oh, I really like them," and I was like, "Yeah, but I really like Sugar Glider," so I'm putting them on where I want them to be. But I remember them all staying, and I remember the guys, playing some of the records, and someone was like, "Oh, you have this Let Live record, Fake History," and I was like, "Yeah." And he goes, "Oh, do you like that band?" And I was like, "Yep, they're really good." And they're like, "Yeah, we just got offered a tour with them," and I was like, "Oh, are you doing it?" And they're like, "Yeah, we're going to do it. It's not been announced. We're still kind of getting all the routing and all that stuff figured out." And so obviously in contact with the dudes, and like there was a date that was announced in Ohio, and it was supposed to be on near Ohio State's campus or something like that. And we were planning on going because it was like a weekend. And I kept telling Jason, I was like, "I can't find any info on this venue. I can't find links to the tickets. Like, are you sure this is a real place? Like, really weird. I can't find any information." So I'm hitting him up for weeks about this. And he's like, "Yeah, it seems legit. Like, I don't know, whatever, though. You guys are good. Like, we'll guest list you and your wife. Like, not a big deal." So
house show.
Getting there.
Okay.
So the night before the show, Jason hits me up and he's like, "So apparently that venue went under. It does not exist. We need something in the area. Can we play your basement? This is a package tour of Night Versus, Let Live, and Harvard." And I was like, "Absolutely. You guys can do it. Like, I can't guarantee you anything, but whatever we can make, I'll absolutely throw back to you guys. You guys are more than welcome to stay here as well. Even if you want to come here the night before, not a big deal. We'll do whatever we can to make this show happen." And it was like, "Okay, cool. I'll get back to you as soon as we know what's going on. We're looking at a couple of different other options." So then it turns into, "Hey man, thanks for, offering your spot. We found a place outside of Chicago. We're going to go there though. It's like a tiny pub." I was like, "All right." And he goes, "So if you guys still want to come out though, still got you, all this kind of stuff." And I had already seen Let Live before, but I'd never seen Night Versus. And I remember getting there, and because of it being a last minute, completely in a different state and all this kind of stuff, it was rather sparsely attended. And I just remember Night Versus going on and being like, "What the fuck is this?" And their drummer, Eric, however you pronounce his name, obviously, just doing fucking jumping all over his drum kit, hanging from the shit above his drum kit, doing flips and all this stuff. And the rest of the band just tearing shit up. And then you're like, "Wow, that was something." And then I went to go figuring they'd have vinyl or something, and they had a t-shirt.
Yeah.
And come to find out, obviously it's Doug from The Sleeping and all that kind of stuff. And Harvard went on. That was rad. And Let Live went on and just basically destroyed the whole fucking place, and everything around them. But it was so weird because they had a hard deadline because a weird nightclub night kind of thing was coming after them.
Right.
So then you had a completely different set of people coming in. And I just remember Jason getting really drunk on wine.
Right.
And I don't know. It was a very surreal 24 hours or so of just being I think we're gonna have Let Live in my basement.
Yeah.
To then being "All right, we're going to Chicago."
That tour is one of my biggest show regrets, actually. I didn't know who Let Live was at the time.
Oh man.
And the New York date was in an Elks Lodge, a literal Elks Lodge, where downstairs was the club lounge with games and a little bar, and upstairs was literal fucking whatever. And we watched Harvard, and me and my girlfriend at the time just were whatever, let's go. And then a couple months later, I was I saw videos of this band, he's a fucking maniac. And then that show would have been probably very memorable. I remember as we were walking out, people were wearing back patches, and I was like, "Who the fuck is this band?" I really love this band, and that should have been an indication that like I should probably stick around.
Yeah, it was really weird. My introduction to Let Live was seeing them open on the Times of Grace Under Oath tour, and Jason jumping into a box. It was something, either a box or garbage can, and basically he jumped into the crowd in it, and then basically drop kicked me.
Nice.
But I didn't know it was coming, so I was like, "What the fuck?" And I turned around, and then here's this dude screaming in this thing, and I was like,
"Random box on the stage."
I don't know. It's almost like if you whatever. If you've ever seen him, you're just like, where do you find these things to climb on and jump off of and get into?
Yeah, I think when I first saw them was that Warped Tour show.
And, when he went under the stage or something.
Yeah, there's like a whole episode of like
Warped
that
Roadies
trying to control him, basically.
Yeah.
Good luck.
Yeah, that's a band that I'm almost Harvard-esque, where I'm surprised they didn't get bigger.
Yeah, well, Fever 333 is getting pretty big, and
I feel like it's manufactured, though.
Yeah,
personally, I mean, you have Feldman and Barker kind of going to bat for you, helping you out, and then a bigger machine pushing it. It doesn't feel and as much as they do things in a very organic way, I feel like it's very unorganic compared to Let Live.
Right.
Personally.
Yeah.
Here's another maybe fun tangent on records. What is a record that you bought after seeing a band that you then realize, like, holy shit, this band's actually bigger than I thought they were at the time?
Like a band that got bigger later on that I bought the record at a show, you're saying?
Yeah.
Well, granted, I was and still go to a decent amount of shows, but I don't really buy vinyl at shows, honestly, that much, just because usually shows, like, I'm from Long Island, so I have to take the train, and like, I don't know. I usually don't, unless it's like a tour variant or something that I know I can only get at that show or whatever. I generally don't buy vinyl at shows so much. I'm trying to think of something though.
You have the one I'll talk about.
Huh?
I said you have the one that I was going to bring up.
Which?
My 68.
Right.
I went to go see Chiodos when they came back and were doing that run after releasing whatever that record was. I can't remember what it's called. And 60, I had just seen the Chariots farewell tour maybe 4 months before at the same venue, and then no one's hanging out. Like, Josh is hanging out at merch, and I'm like, hey, okay, like, this is cool. I dug this. And then they had a 7-inch, and I was like, no one seemed to give a shit. I don't think every time I've seen 68, I don't think people get it. Like, you just get a lot of this. That
first record is my favorite new music album of the last, I would say 5. Well, at this point, it's maybe a little older than 5 years old, but within the last decade, that's easily top 3, if not maybe number 1. Like, I fucking love that record. Yeah, I didn't really like the second one that much, oddly, but I love the first record so much.
I remember buying that. It was numbered. It had Elvis on it, and it was the whole playoff of the 68 comeback special thing. And I was like, that's cool. And then I was like, hey, man, do you mind signing this? And he's like, yeah. And then I think he was wanting to talk more or whatever. And I was like, all right, well, see you later. Bye. And then there's just a sad Josh sitting at merch where no one's buying any of his stuff because it's too weird, I think, for people to understand. And then
is that weird? I don't like, because in my opinion, it's a mix of White Stripes meets Nirvana, I guess.
Yeah, a little bit.
And that said, I don't know, the 2-member thing at that point was relatively popular. I don't know, Black Keys and whatever. White Stripes, granted, White Stripes is 15 years before that, but
I mean, I can tell you why.
Because no one likes working with Josh.
Well, besides that, I don't know if that's true or not. I can't verify that. But I will say that if you're a hardcore fan of a band like the Chariot, you're just, it's hard.
Yeah.
It's hard to make that transition from, we just want to put out some really cool rock stuff and it's going to be fun and you're not going to be expecting it. Whereas I think, Chariot fans were more just oh, it's Josh, it's going to be crazy. And it is that, but it's not the type of crazy that maybe they were expecting. And so I think a lot of those, especially, I think they're gaining traction now, but I think those early 68 tours, those early 68 shows, people were just kind of checking it out to see what it was. Like, you know, is this going to be just like what we're expecting or not? And I think the problem with somebody like Josh is that you just really never know what that dude's going to do next. And and I think he is that way too, in that, you know, I think the dude's never put out the expected product, you know, and that's a double-edged sword, because years later, everybody is like, "Oh, you're such a genius! I can't believe you did this." But whenever they first start out, it's like, "Oh, why are you doing this?"
I want to put out his acoustic. The what's the name of the record? Thorn by Name, I think.
By Any Other Name.
Yeah. At one point, we almost put that out, and then it just kind of fell through and never happened. But yeah, Josh is a talented dude.
Yeah.
Although I don't think anyone cares about that record either, unfortunately.
No, I've got it. It's a CD version.
It has a very low amount of plays on Spotify. Like people know it exists.
I think that was too far in the soft direction. I think 68 is a better kind of transition into something like that. Whereas at that time he was still full on Chariot.
Right.
You know, so to drop something like that, I know that's what he wanted to do, because I remember I was emailing him way back in the day about the stuff like, and he's like, "Oh, I'm about to put out something really, really, really cool." And then he put out the, you know, Rose by Any Other Name, and I was like, because I ordered it, and then he actually emailed me back after it got sent to me, and he was like, "So what'd you think?" And I was like, "You're a cool dude, Josh," and that's all. You know, like,
how it gets on if he's emailing everybody who bought a copy, being like, "What'd you think?"
Yeah, that means it must have been like me and like maybe eight other people that bought it. Yeah. I think I still have the bumper sticker on one of my guitars, or the actual sticker on one of my guitars, but I wanted to like it.
Yeah, unfortunately that happens sometimes.
Purchase justification. It's a real thing.
Dan, do you have something that you were surprised that, you know, became bigger, like they got bigger after you bought the record?
Yeah, probably. And they got bigger after I bought it. And this is it isn't on vinyl, but it's Nodes of how do you pronounce their names? Nodes of Ranvier or Nodes of Ranvier. I don't know. There's actually an interview on another podcast that they just did, so I'll listen to it and find out how they say it. But anyway, I saw them. I thought that their show was killer. I bought their CD, and then like they blew up like 8 days later because everybody did what I did. They saw them. They saw them live, and they're like, "Oh my god, this band's amazing!" And yeah, they got really, really, really big. Loved their first two records, and then the other two were. Well, they just weren't the same. And, you know, but yeah, I was super surprised at how big that band got.
Yeah, for me, thinking about it, it's not a band I saw live that I got the vinyl, but Portugal the Man I've been into since Give Up the Ghost broke up. And the fact
wasn't it Anatomy of the Ghost?
Huh?
Wasn't it Anatomy of a Ghost?
Sorry.
No, I listened to Dewey's podcast, so I hear those two band names so often now.
And I had their entire catalog from, you know, whatever, 2010 when everything was and on. And the fact that they became what they became is still very crazy to me. Like, granted, like, Harvard is very different than them, but, like, they were on the path with Equal Vision, and, like, all those bands that got big went through Equal Vision. And that's what really upsets me is, like, as we said before, like, they broke up when they were finally getting the notoriety and starting to get on tours and starting to get something. And, like, they were on the road of, you know, the bands that are, granted, they're not like Coheed, they're not like they aren't exactly like these bands, but they're weird and undefinable and great live. And all these bands went through the exact same road. And if, granted, Harvard would have had to evolve a lot and get a lot poppier, but, like, who knows what would have happened? Who would have imagined Portugal the Man would have been in fucking the supermarket? Like, I hear that song everywhere.
Yeah.
And I'm just like, it's crazy that this band reached a level like this. I would have never picked them ever to do that.
Speaking of 68, I was just reminded of when I saw 68 play a random place here in Michigan, and this band Idle Hands opened for them. And the whole time I was watching, I was like, man, this is like Harvard, kind of, like just a little bit different. And I bought the vinyl, was talking to the band dudes, and the guy was like, Oh man, yeah, Harvard. They were really great. The label said that basically we're taking over for the spot they left as far as the sound. And he goes, and then the funny thing is, like, I think maybe a month or two later they broke up. And I was like, you did actually slip right in and take over for them. You came, you had a promising sound and a great record, and then you left.
Wow.
And then the dude messaged me on Instagram and said, I see you're a fan of this band. And I was like, I don't like that band on any of the socials, so I don't know how you found that.
Wow.
So enjoy the tunes. Obviously it's kind of turned into a little bit of like it's kind of weird because I don't necessarily. It's kind of hard to define because like you do soundtracks, like you've done was it Not Another Teen Movie you did a while back?
Which surprisingly did not do very well. And that's amazing. It's very hard to predict these things, and even when you think like, every Manson record's out of press and goes for a ton of money. Orgy Blue Monday's never been on vinyl. Good Charlotte, all the stuff is out of press. Phantom Plant,
Yeah.
Like it's such an incredible. Plus, they're all soundtracks, exclusive tracks, like covers of amazing songs. Like that's one of the few ones that I can't fucking figure it out. Like we made 1,000 copies, and it's been 3-4 years later. Like you think you sell 1,000 copies in an afternoon of something like that.
It's funny because we were actually a couple weeks ago when we did our top 5 new metal countdown with Andrew from the Ghost Inside. At the very end, we segued and we're like, "What are your favorite like new metal soundtracks?" And I almost threw in Not Another Teen Movie just because of some of the band.
There's a lot of good metal soundtracks.
Yeah. So when are you going to put out the Freddy versus Jason soundtrack on vinyl for us?
Do it.
Or Queen of the Damned, an official pressing of it.
Not sure what label that one's on. I could look into it. Although both Jason and Freddy stuff is for the most part spoken for by various other labels. That's Scores generally. But yeah, I guess leading into the enjoy the tune shit. Like I said 2 minutes ago, like it's very hard to predict these things. And the first enjoy the tunes thing. Well, the reason it kind of happened was I found a Ren and Stimpy 7-inch on Instagram originally, and I was like, "Oh, that's fucking cool!" Like, I wonder if anything else like this exists. And besides the 7-inch, not much did. And then I saw that there was a Nicktoons Best of Nicktoons album that had like everything I grew up listening to or grew up watching, essentially. And it was owned by a company I was already working with, so I hit them up, and basically at that point I made the sub label because I thought I was going to get laughed at for putting out. Because at the time there was no context of really anything. Soundtracks weren't really a thing. I remember specifically Hot Topic telling me, I don't know, 2012, 13, like, we don't want compilations, we don't want soundtracks, like nobody fucking wants a compilation on vinyl. And at the time I agreed with him. Like, you could just make a mixtape on fucking iTunes or whatever. Like, if you want to make a compilation, you can make your own mixtape at this point. Although I get it's a lot different. They're a lot more of a collectible nostalgia kind of situation in general. But at the time, I remember specifically Hot Topic being like we don't want that shit. But yeah, at the time there really wasn't too many soundtracks out, especially by the labels that I was that was putting out similar kind of whatever pop punk emo stuff. And the only thing that was similar was a My Little Pony release. And I always associated that label afterwards with like, oh, that's the guys who put out My Little Pony, even though they did like The Walking Dead and Breaking Bad and a ton of other stuff. But like, I didn't want to be known as like, oh, like that. Those are the dudes who did the Nicktoons if it failed. So I kind of made a label as a failsafe that like, that wasn't me. That was.
It's funny.
And then ironically, it was the opposite. It sold out really quickly and did really well. And then I just kind of ran with it from there. And now we're 25, 27 releases into Enjoy the Tunes, which is pretty crazy. All sorts of, I guess the definition of it is family-friendly soundtracks.
Yeah.
So anything that is a soundtrack that isn't gory, I guess, or horror-y or whatever.
I'm waiting for a Salute Your Shorts and/or Are You Afraid of the Dark soundtrack.
Are You Afraid of the Dark? And that we've been working on for a long time. It's fucking
really.
That would be cool.
You said it's coming?
Yeah.
Not officially or not definitely. We've been working on a lot of different. So the issue with a lot of this stuff is it's never been released on any format before, so it's really complicated. First, finding the composers to see if there are masters, and then we have to get them remastered. We have to get things approved. We have to even see if they're usable and how much there is to see if it's even a release full of material kind of stuff. Like the Hey Arnold release that we just did, like a 2-3 year process because it's never been released before. So we had to choose a track listing, then get it completely. It was mixed for TV, which a lot of the stuff mixed for TV are sound effects and voices are high and music is generally low. So that's a whole ordeal to figure that out. So it gets complicated, especially if something hasn't been released before. It gets complicated, to say the least.
Man, I'm gonna have to snatch up a Are You Afraid of the Dark if that drops. And you're gonna have to do like a weird thing that smells like campfire or comes with like fucking dust or something.
Just a bag of dust. That's perfect.
Hey, didn't they make a movie out of that recently?
I think they made something. I don't know if they rebooted
or a new series or something.
And they might have rebooted the series, or maybe they did like a made-for-TV movie. They did a Goosebumps movie with like Jack Black and shit.
Goosebumps.
Yeah,
they did. They did. Well, I know they did a movie of Legends of the Hidden Temple.
Yeah,
they had done that. But I think that was. I only saw the trailer for it. I don't even know if it came out, but it looked pretty bad.
And I was like, I don't understand what this even is.
Yeah, like how do you turn a game show? I mean, they're rebooting, or maybe they did reboot. I don't pay attention to these things. I think they tried to redoing Dora.
As
like,
I
don't know if that came out or not, but
redoing lots of stuff. Beavis and Butthead's coming back. Daria is coming back. Ren and Stimpy is coming back. They announced a couple weeks ago.
Yeah,
lots of shit. But
never underestimate the power of nostalgia, and I think some of that is largely responsible for the boom in vinyl as well. Just like because we all kind of reached a point where we kind of felt like we lost our childhoods and just had to move on. And now as adults, now that we actually have money to spend on things, it's like, yeah, dude, I'll buy a Are You Afraid of the Dark soundtrack on vinyl. You know what I mean? Like how nostalgic is that? Even though like if you really look at the 90s, nobody wanted to have anything to do with a vinyl record, in the 90s, but we don't care. We're making our own history.
Yeah, it's more, it's a collectible. Like it's a nice like as long as it's high quality and like it's a nice thing to, look at and fucking reminisce and obviously listen to. And the music's never been released and it always triggers memories. And like Hey Arnold like has a very passionate fan base and like people have been waiting for that soundtrack for apparently a long time. Like people were saying like we've been waiting 15-20 years for this, like whatever. And like a lot of these songs mean a lot to people, and I can't believe like people had sent very heartfelt messages, both emails and Instagram messages when they got the records. It's nice, spending 2-3 years on this shit, having people, appreciate it and really enjoy it. It's nice.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I think I'm the era of music I'm really looking forward to somebody starting to put out on vinyl is like a lot of the new metal stuff. Like I'm surprised a lot of it does not exist.
Music on vinyl has done a lot of it. A lot of it like we've attempted and either we aren't able to get clearance for, or like Papa Roach, for example. Like that's like I love Infest. That's like one of my guilty pleasure records, even though it's not really guilty pleasure. It's a fucking great record. But like for years, like I pitched out the Hot Topic when I was working with them, and they're like, nobody wants this. I'm like,
I have it.
It's sold fucking like 10 million CDs. Like nobody wants this. You can't sell 1,000 copies on vinyl. It sold fucking so many CDs, and like every retailer was like, nope. So I think that's a lot of it. That the labels are going to the stores, being like, if we make whatever Godsmack on vinyl, you down on that? And they're like, nope.
That's weird too, because like they have to notice there's been an increase in streams on that stuff. Everybody, at least for the past 2 years, has been sort of going back to new metal, in the sense of like, there's new bands popping up that are trying to sound like the 90s bands. And
honestly, like the end of like going back to new metal soundtracks, the End of Days soundtrack was done recently. And like I figured that would do well. Like it has a really good track list and has a Guns N' Roses unreleased song or whatever exclusive song on it.
Yeah.
and like 2,000 copies on color, and like you can still get them. They're like $12 on eBay, and that's like an import, which is usually like 35, 40.
Yeah.
So I don't know. It's hard to really like Stained. We've been like trying to do for a long time.
Yes, Dysfunction needs to be pressed on vinyl.
Yeah, and
Needs
like
to.
combination of like they don't really want us to do it, and we aren't getting clearance for it. Well, I guess I don't know if they want us to do it or not, but we aren't getting cleared, so someone doesn't want us to do it.
Well, what's weird is like I just saw that someone like because I keep getting sponsored ads for this on occasion where it's like the Illusion of Progress is pressed and they're like first time on vinyl. I'm like, I don't want that. Give me Dysfunction. Give me Break the Cycle.
Right.
Hell, even give me like 14 Shades of Grey. Like I'll take those all day long, or even the last one they put out. But it's like the fact that Dysfunction isn't on vinyl at this point, it's like, what the fuck?
Yeah.
Or
like,
even, I mean, even throw like a Break the Cycle or something like out there, which you know will sell tons of copies.
Yeah, like Break the Cycle had like huge singles on it. I remember,
Like
I remember that song being like the song of the fucking summer, or whatever year that was.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I'll Be Here a while, or It's Been a While.
It's been a while, yeah.
Yeah.
And then you had Outside from the like. I know Family Values has been pressed like originally, which I found those a little couple years ago, and I was like, wow, really? Like,
Yeah, I have
on vinyl. But like, what would be cool is if someone were to press the Family Values 2001, because I don't think that ever got a pressing.
Is that the one with the baby on it?
What was that?
Is that the one with the baby on the cover?
No, that was 99. 98 was the one with Core and Ice Cube and all them. 99 was Limp Bizkit, Method Man, Redman, Primus, and all them. 2001 was like a Treyu Korn.
A lot of those tours, like Woodstock 99 hasn't been fucking pressed, and like I'm sure there's a reason why, and we've inquired.
I'm sure that's probably so hard to do with all the legalities of all the different bands on all the different labels.
Yeah,
maybe.
but like, generally speaking, these contracts are done like in perpetuity for every format. So like it's not like they have to go back to whoever and re-sign a contract for 2,000 copies or whatever. Like it doesn't generally work like that. Granted, every deal is different, and sometimes that's why we get declined for shit, because there's some weird caveat somewhere. But
out of curiosity, do sunset clauses exist on stuff like that?
What's a sunset clause? Sorry.
So sunset clause, like on, we'll just say like the Drake record or whatever, for example, since I pulled that up. There might be a sunset clause like in 15 years, the label no longer owns it. It then is up for.
Every label is different. Every deal is different, both for us licensing and the deals that were signed initially. That's why a lot of the stuff takes years upon years of clearance, because they have to dig up a contract and go legal and see if there's some sort of weird stipulation that they made that either like some artists have, like they need to sign off on any third-party licensing situation. So like we've been declined for stuff because of that, or whatever, just because simply they don't want anyone outside the label doing it, or outside the whatever, the home label.
So can we jump into some conspiracy theories here real quick? So, and I don't know anything about this, so you guys might have to fill the blanks in a little bit. This is the best way to start a conspiracy theory. I don't know anything about this, but I'm going to run my mouth anyway. Apparently, wasn't there like a fire where like a whole bunch of master recordings were destroyed, and it was too much. Like it was to an extent that was like not what was reported. Like there's actually tons and tons of stuff that either they just can't find, or whatever. And I do wonder if sometimes that is what is blocking some of these releases, where they just can't get a master for it.
That's universal, supposedly, and no one really knows except for the people on the inside what wasn't damaged. And I don't know, you'd like to think things are backed up at least one way or another, be it digitally or whatever.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean,
a thing.
It's not like a MySpace though, where they lost all their shit and then apparently were able to recover about a quarter of it.
Dude, that's a treasure trove, some of that MySpace stuff.
Absolutely.
Ugh.
That's why when you put out that was it the Dave Malio stuff?
Yeah.
It was like the pseudo like MySpace collection or whatever. That was interesting.
Yeah, unfortunately, that was another one of those. Like, I think people want this, and people did not seem to want it.
Not for nothing. It didn't really. I mean, it seemed like he was stoked on it, but at the same time, I don't know. It just didn't seem like he pushed it a whole lot either.
Well, he doesn't really have much of a social media following, and he's the opposite in terms of right place, right time. He was in the right place at the wrong time. Like he has a whole podcast. Like he has a podcast and he has like a mini series in the podcast, kind of going through his journey in the music industry, which is how this all happened. Honestly, I stumbled upon the podcast and he was telling his whole story through his eyes and played a bunch of these demos, and they're fucking good. And I was like, "Yo, you want to put out this record finally and kind of figure something out?" But he signed to Drive Through right as they were falling apart. And basically the EP came out right when people were whatever. They stopped signing bands essentially and stopped putting anything out. So he was right at the tail end. And I don't know if he said it I think it was in his podcast, but he could have signed to Fuel by Ramen. But at the time, Fuel by Ramen, this was before Take This to Your Grave came out, maybe right when it came out. And all they had was like Punchline, and like a year later they would have, Paramore and Fall Out Boy and Panic a year or two after that, and like
Glass Heroes.
Yeah. So he just kind of, unfortunately, I don't blame him. I would have made the same fucking decision. I was a hardcore Drive Through fanboy, and that's 100%. If I was between Fuel by Ramen and Drive Through in whatever year that was, 2003, I want to say.
Yeah, I think that's what he said.
Yeah, it was 2003. Because at that point, also, like, Drive Through just signed a distribution deal with MCA Geffen, famously, and they kind of stopped pushing their artists because any artist could be taken by MCA Geffen, and
right.
want to get their artist taken, and it became a whole thing. So it was a fine line. So I don't even think they put out Malolo's EP to buy. I think it was part of the free thing. Because for a while they were putting out free EPs as like a loophole, from what I gather. But I don't know. I'm not going to speak definitively because I don't really fully know.
Right.
What is, kind of as we start wrapping up, what is I guess we'll go with two-part. What is your white whale record that you're after for everybody? And what is your most prized possession record?
That I'm after to press.
What was that?
That I'm after like to release on the label, or I'm after personally?
Why don't we do both?
That I'm after to release on the label.
Graduation.
There's things that we're still working on that like have been a long time in the works that I can't talk about or whatever, and things that I've been trying to get clearance for that are in a no for a long time. But as I've stated in the past, that I know is coming out on another label, That Thing You Do is one of my favorite movies, and being a soundtrack label now and whatever, like those songs are fucking incredible. And like I have the 7-inch, which is very, very hard to get now. That was like something I got early on that now goes for like $100+. So that's definitely, if I could release anything and there is no legal stipulations, that's definitely always one of the few things that comes to mind. Mondo will be doing that soon though, this year, hopefully, maybe next year at this point. I know they're waiting on the Hanks to give them some stuff.
Nice.
What's as far as like your actual collection?
I have an unreleased Glassjaw test pressing for an album that was supposed to come out on Record Store Day. Like the El Mark EP was supposed to be a Record Store Day release one year, that it got canceled. I don't know why. I think the band wasn't cool with it, but I don't know that for a fact. But there's a handful of test pressings that are floating around that people have, that I got one off eBay at one point. That's being they're one of my favorite bands, and I fucking love those songs. Yeah. So that's off the top of my head, probably up there for sure. Jay-Z Unplugged also is a
that one.
Love that record, and it's really hard to find now, and I'm very, very glad that I got that when I did.
Did they ever? Is it
press that, which would never happen?
Is that I only have a bootleg of that. I don't think I've ever seen a real pressing of that.
It's a real pressing of it. It's a single. The bootleg's a double, right?
Yep.
Yeah, the original is a single. I think it's German only, maybe. Yeah, I should have gotten the bootleg. I regret not getting a bootleg to listen to, because I listened to that record a decent amount, and there's a couple skips in it already, so I don't want to listen to it more, but I do want to listen to it more. So
yeah, that might be one of my favorite unplugs ever.
Oh yeah, that is my favorite Unplugged, which is ironic considering it's hip hop.
No, I mean that's the thing. Is like the Roots are one of my favorite bands. Like I would love to see a Roots unplugged.
Oh yeah.
They have this. I mean, that's probably other than Kanye and Jay-Z and Drake. That's probably the other band that I have the most of is the Roots. I have most everything on vinyl.
Nice. Yeah, I just got the Vinyl Me Please reissue of
Chronology.
Yeah.
Yep, same.
Done really nicely.
Yeah, it is. It's kind of a pain in the ass to get out of the packaging and do all that shit, but it's really nice. It's really well done. That was kind of for a while. That was one of my last white whales where I was like, I really need to like get this to kind of complete my set. But I got that now, so now it's on to some other stuff. Dan, what about you? What is the white whale record that you still need to get, and what is your most prized record in your collection?
Well, the white whale is probably the Almighty Norma Jean box set, which was I mean, it's available. It still popped up on eBay every now and again, but like, you know, I have, you know, a mortgage to pay. So it's typically not in my price range. And it's used. I always wanted a new, you know, like a new unmessed with, unplayed version, because it's the first 4 Norma Jean records. And as of right now, I don't think any of them have been repressed. No, one of them has. Oh God, The Aftermath is repressed. I've got that. So I mean, I'd be comfortable with like making it myself, but they had way better, like they had alternate artwork for every record and all that. So it was just something that I really wanted, but unfortunately could not get. The last Norma Jean vinyl I tried to buy sold out in 3 hours. So I didn't get that one either. So yeah, it's always, I've always been kind of swinging and missing on that band. But as far as my most prized record that I have, probably it's a first press of Black Sabbath, self-titled Black Sabbath. And it's original press, and it's actually still sealed. But you know, I'll never open it to verify, but but it's cool.
Vanilla inside of it.
it's got an old God, I can't even remember what the name of the record store was. It was like some mom and pop store, and it was sold for like $9 or something. It's still got the price sticker on it and everything, and it's the actual like real deal. And it's actually there's a sticker on it that just says scary. So like they didn't know, because you know, I mean, it's self-titled Black Sabbath, so it had to have been old enough to where they didn't have a heavy metal section, right? You know, to put it in. So yeah.
Also, another thing that comes to mind, which I post every once in a while on Instagram, like every few years, I have a 7-inch that was technically Def Jam's first release. It was Rick Rubin's like art punk rock band when he was in NYU.
Oh, cool.
They're made from like a lunch bag that they like folded over with like a taped on a dress with his dorm on it. It's fun. And the label's like hand inscribed. Like Rick Rubin's like one of my fucking heroes. So like,
that's cool.
Like I got that when I found out it existed, maybe like 2010. They don't go for that much because people don't know they go for a decent amount, but not like hundreds because people don't know they exist.
Yeah.
That's cool considering it was probably handmade by him or hopefully him.
I think my white whale currently, and I'm hoping for a repress because everything I found of this record, they're like just not in good condition and they're going for hundreds. And it's like, I'm not paying that kind of money for a shit ass record. Is the Aaliyah self-titled record, the last one. I'm still waiting for her uncle. Supposedly, her birthday, which happened already, was supposed to see all of her catalog be released on all the platforms, but for whatever reason, that has not happened. So you can only hear Age Ain't Nothing But a Number currently on anything. But
that's a major, I assume, right?
What, the self-titled?
Yeah.
I think it was on. I keep wanting to say Artista, but I know that wasn't it. I think it was like Columbia or something like that.
Yeah, like it's weird. Like a major label wouldn't have a major artist, even though they are in her bigger records. I don't know.
Well, I mean, like that's the thing, though, is like, you know, between 1 in a Million and the self-titled, those go for so fucking much. But when you can find them on Discogs, it's like good luck finding one that's not graded at like average or fair.
Unfortunately, everything that came out back then, hip hop wise, like people just kept them in crates and shit. So
Yeah.
like
Yep.
jackets are beat up. It's
So-
very hard to find like hip hop rap stuff from around that time that isn't beat up jackets.
So I'm unfortunately not really willing to drop almost $300 for a beat to shit looking copy of that.
Outfitters doesn't release that. Like they've been doing a lot of like that era pop stuff, and that seems like something that they would do.
I mean, there's obviously demand. Like I go to YouTube to listen to that record all the time, and you look at the comments, and there are comments that are from like days, weeks ago that are like, "Who's still coming here in 2020 listening to this?" And it's like, it's so fucking good. It still sounds relevant, and I'd imagine like getting it, like, because I don't typically buy singles, but because of Aaliyah's catalog not being typically readily available as a full like buy this record and I can get everything. So I've been buying a lot of the singles for rather cheap, and they're in decent condition. You know, coming from overseas for like, you know, $8-9, and you know, getting like it's kind of cool to hear like the acapella. You know,
I have a lot of
and so
12 maxi singles of random like bad boy fucking stuff, and like I like that shit a lot. Like the random, I have a 9 Inch Nails remix of like Puff Daddy and Biggie song that's fucking epic. Random 12-inch.
But yeah, that's my white whale. Whenever that gets a repressing, if it ever gets a repressing, I'm so ready for that. Because basically, like I said, like I remember Record Store Day a handful of years ago. Bridget I had to work, and so she went to Kalamazoo, which is like an hour away, and picked up the Acacia Strains Dead Walk, which was out for Record Store that year, and Aaliyah Agent Nothing But a Number, and bought those two for me. And the cash register person was like, "Oh, yours and, you know, boyfriend, husband's, whatever." And she goes, "No, both for my husband." He goes, "Wow, that's really broad ends of the spectrum on that." And then most prized possession, I gotta say, it's probably that Korn test press. Like, it's one of those that whenever, you know, when I had it and people would see it, they're just like, "Holy shit!" Like,
There's 5 of them. Makes sense.
yeah, there's 5 of those, and there were 10 total between the silver version and the one that I have. And, you know, it's one of those things, like, some people are like, well, you know, this isn't, you know, the original pressing of a test press or whatever, but it is still one of those things that, like, for me, that is one where it's like, I can tell you where I was when I first heard that record and how much it meant to me, and is one of those things where I'm just like, there's no way I'm not, like, you know, Dan kind of made the comment earlier about like, oh, sometimes like with records, we're basically rebuying our youth on vinyl.
Right.
And for me, that's totally what that record is. I mean, Dan even said, like, I think I played it once when I first got it, because unbeknownst to me, my friend bought the Coke bottle variant.
Yeah.
So at least I'd have a copy to play and listen to without having to play the test press. And it was one of those things where, like, Dan's like, oh, I listened to it because I don't have that on vinyl. And it was kind of cool to listen to that first self-titled record on vinyl and just kind of be going back to when you first heard it and all that. And I think, to me, like, that's the thing that I love about that record, is it's so ensconced in my childhood. And, you know, that was one of the first concerts I wanted to go see, that my parents took me.
They were my first concert, actually.
Yeah.
The Sick and Twisted tour was with them and Sting.
Yeah. Yep, that was the first tour I wanted to go see that I wanted to see of a band I liked. And, you know, my dad took me, and it was one of those things, like, I'll never forget that. But like, Korn is that band for me, like, you know, so it was kind of a trip, like, to take my wife to go see Korn for her first time. And it's like, yeah, they're not as scary or like, you know, on top of things like as they were back like on that Sick and Twisted tour or whatever. But
so great live. Like, I saw them a couple of years ago. Like, they're one of the best live bands I've ever seen.
Absolutely.
I'm sure them being the first show I saw probably has something to do with that, but like, they're fucking great. Like, I've seen them maybe 4 or 5 times at this point.
Yeah, I've seen them a handful of times. Like, did you actually get to see him on that tour with David drumming, or did you get to see him with Mikey Borden from Faith No More?
On the Sick and Twisted tour? I don't remember at all.
I know we got to see it with Mikey Borden, which was crazy because my dad, being a big Ozzy fan and Faith No More fan, he was like, dude, that's fucking Mikey Borden. And I was like, yeah, that's pretty cool. And like,
it gets like a couple days before, like, for some reason, just like never occurred to me that like I can go see a concert. And my friend was like, "You want to go see Korn?" I was like, "We could do that." And we got like terrible seats, like literally one of the worst, like one of the back rows. So I remember being far and smelling weed for the first time. I remember that being a very memorable show.
I remember seeing boobs for the first time, and my dad being like, "Yeah, you can't tell your mom about this," and I was like, "Okay."
I think, I think people were like flashing the fucking cameras and shit, like in between sets. I think that was the thing.
I remember a website. This is going way back. I remember a website called concertflashing.com.
I don't remember that, but that's
like,
wow.
Talk about the internet, the early days of the internet where you could find weird shit.
The internet became like I assume we're around the same age. I'm 35.
I'm
So
36 in like a month. Not even.
It's been very interesting. Like we're in the generation where like we remember
pre-internet,
and also remember like the beginning of it and how like everyone was just happy to fucking have free things and have access to talk to each other. And like the last 10 years, it's just gotten like so toxic, and the internet is just such a sad place.
I just wanted the internet so I could play Max Payne on my computer. Dan still has the fucking mouse pad.
Oh yeah, I think I stopped using that one finally. Now I've got this monstrosity here, which is like a LED constantly changing lights thing, because that's what's cool about computers now, kids. You can make them rainbowy too.
Yeah.
Well, this was a lot of fun.
Kids love it.
Where I mean, granted, I have a little ticker down here at the bottom where it says where you can go to find your stuff. But for those listening, because we're going to do the audio portion of this, where can everyone find you or Enjoy the Ride Records or any of that stuff online?
Social media is at Enjoy the Ride Records on Facebook and Instagram, at Enjoy the Ride RES on Twitter, and enjoytheriderecords.com is the website, and that has photos and everything on sale that's still in stock and pressing information and all that good stuff. So we got some articles and trying to get some more content. Also, our mailing list is relatively new within the last couple of years, and we have all sorts of exclusive shit through there also. And
the fun trick, we're going to actually release this on vinyl. Ross is going to put this interview out.
Perfect. Yeah.
An hour and a half, double LP.
Oh, man, that'd be so sweet. I want a test press.
There you go.
And a picture disc with all of our faces on it.
Make sure mine's in this quality. I will not send you anything higher than this.
It's a lossless file.
I like the VHS look of my webcam. I don't know.
It almost feels like you're about to get murdered at any moment.
I know. Somebody commented that on my live stream the other night. They're like, "Is somebody about to sneak up behind you with an axe?" And I'm like, "No, you better be looking behind you. Don't worry about me."
Actually, I have one last question for you, just because I've wondered this, seeing these pop up a lot more. So you're starting to see a lot of vinyl for, like, I think it was the Friday the 13th that was doing the blood-filled stuff. And obviously I've seen like the translucent vinyl. I think you did one with like glow in the dark ink or something, or liquid.
We got a few things like that. We did for Scotty Doesn't Know, we did absinthe filled. We did for Turtles, we did like an ooze filled. Yep. We did for Coconut Pete, we did a sand filled, which is Broken Lizard people for anyone not familiar. And then we put a pre-order up for 28, which was, the zombie movies, a blood-filled version of that, which is shipping like in the next couple of weeks, I'm pretty sure. I saw pictures a couple days ago. And then we have a bunch more coming, actually. But yeah.
How hard is it to get that? Because I feel like with the extra weight of it and potentially it moving, that it, like, I don't own anything like that. Is it hard to get it to work to where it's not affecting the record playing at all?
Yeah, like whatever inside doesn't affect like the weight of like the vinyl itself sound wise or anything. Granted, like they're mainly novelties. Like you can listen to them and people sometimes do listen to them, but in my opinion and in my suggestion, they're not really meant to be listened to like a lot. You can listen to it, but like they're novelties. But that said, like they sound fine. I've listened to all the ones that we've put out, both samples and finished product or whatever, and they're really bringing the whole market to like another level of novelty collectability kind of stuff. We're doing a Ren and Stimpy release. I announced this on the Mondo Art of Soundtrack thing a few weeks ago. We're doing a Ren and Stimpy release that we're going to do like kitty litter inside. So
that's cool.
Yeah, it was just one of those things. Like I wondered because like it would seem like potentially the sloshing of the liquid moving while it's spinning would throw off like
the vinyl's really heavy. Like it's 2 records together, so like I never had any issue with like anything inside affecting anything, but the records themselves are pretty heavy, so they're weighed down.
I think Dan and I have actually had an argument about this at one point. Does the European like heavier vinyl actually do anything, or is it just like a because you're sold that it sounds better or it's supposed to be better that it does?
From my research and whatever, from what I've seen, the gram of vinyl doesn't do anything with the sound quality. It's more to prevent warping, which
that's what I was gonna say. It's definitely a more like it's a tougher product. But yeah, it's not going to make your record magically sound good because there's so many guys. You can always tell when somebody's been collecting vinyl for a very short period of time when they're like, I just got this baby here, 180 gram. And I was like, okay, so it's more work to put it in. Like, I don't understand. You know, it's like, oh, it's 180 grams. Yeah, man, it's a very, very nice record. But like, it doesn't sound better than like my copy. That's my floppy copy. I mean, if you grab most people will tell you straight up, like a record from the 80s that hasn't been messed with sounds better than a lot of the modern releases that come out.
Dude,
that's
my
all.
Tears
Just
for Fears record sounds great.
Well, that's what I'm saying. They sound great. So why is it that it has to be 180 gram or whatever to sound great in modern day? It just doesn't. It doesn't really make any sense.
Well,
Nobody
modern day also like standard weight from the plant that we primarily use is like 140 to 160 gram, and then weight, quote unquote, it's like 180 to 200 grams. So like back in the 80s when it was, you know, everything was a bit thinner, 70s, 80s, like I think it was more like 80, 90, 100. So
yeah,
I don't like. Plus, like very minimal differences. Like unless you have a really high end system and you have a really trained ear, like you're not going to hear very minimal things.
Yeah.
People hear things that they want to hear in a lot of situations where they various things, honestly.
Well, that's why it's a good marketing term. It's like blast processing for the Sega, you know? It's like why is Sonic so fast? Well, it's blast processing. It's like, oh, okay.
Sure. Apple always use something learning. Apple always uses during their keynotes. I can't remember the name. Whatever. But yeah, buzzwords.
Yeah.
Well, Ross, thank you so much for taking the time to do this. It was a lot of fun, and I know you and I have gone back and forth with a lot of different vinyl talks, so it was fun to finally do this kind of in a big, more public forum. A
rare interview, I guess.
What was that?
A rare interview, I guess, is only like the second or third time I'm doing something like this. But
I mean, I hit you up so long ago, and then you're like, there's a lot of stuff that like I just don't want to talk about. And then I was like, well, I mean, we can make it fun and whatever. And you're like, it's just I don't do that. And I was like, all right,
that's cool.
And finally, here we are. Like that's kind of been the funny thing about like all these years later now of like some people like getting to talk to Jesse from Misery Signals. It's like I hit him up a while ago, and he's like, yeah, I don't know. And then he was like, yeah, I'm interested. And then it was like all these conditions, and it was like this is the year that it finally happened, and it was really cool when it did. But it was just one of those things like it took so long. But it's like I feel like with everyone kind of having nothing to do and stuff like that, and I think like these kind of things becoming more prevalent, I think everyone's kind of like, I guess it's not really like, it's not as scary as I think it is. Like Dan for a while was like, I don't want to do live scares me. And then like now like he was telling me that it is like, so I started a Twitch, I do live from this thing. And I was like, God damn, man, like created a monster.
It's just the garbage camera. So it's one of those like, I don't know, man, it's gotten more fun and it's all in control. I think in the world pre-podcasts, when somebody would ask you to do an interview, you had no idea what you were in for, in the sense of like, are people going to just like, because I did a few interviews for like magazines and stuff whenever I played music, and it was always like some of the interviews were cool, but sometimes like it would just be like randomly out of nowhere. I was joking before we went on stream that I was going to be, the first question. So what do you think of Trump? Or something like that. But you would actually get stuff like that. like in the early 2000s and stuff, like people would ask you just the weirdest questions. So like, I totally understand why a lot of people are super guarded about like, I don't want to get into a potentially unfamiliar or weird situation or a conversation that I didn't really sign up for with somebody. And that's also what I tell myself anytime, you know, because I mean, shoot, me and John are asking for interviews like every day. And that's why we don't take it personally. Cause like I get like, you know, even when we get requests a lot of times to be on other podcasts, and it's like, I don't know if there's anything that could be gleaned from my being on your podcast that isn't already gleaned from what I'm already doing, you know? So totally get that.
For better or worse, like the company is really still just me. Like I have an operations manager who like is a friend of mine that helps out like remotely once a week and here once a week. But like, I don't know, I was always kind of hesitant interview wise just because I don't know, it's an easy target when there's a face and a name directly associated with a company. And I in that early on, like especially the vinyl collectors are a passionate bunch to say the least. So that was part of it. Also, people on the internet with their, you know, faceless warriors.
Mm-hmm.
So lastly, something we're going to do, just because I know the audio will be pumped out, and I'm going to assume it's going to take a little bit to get to this number, so I'm just going to go ahead and put it in here. So when I talked to Doc Coyle, the whole thing was I got a Wawa gift card from them for having a Wawa tattoo for those watching or who will see this. And so they sent me this gift card. Unfortunately, I live in Michigan. There is no Wawa here. There's not one anywhere remotely near me. And sadly, you can't use this on their online store. So I guess credit to them that you have to go to a store and use this, so they know if you buy one, you're kind of stuck with it. Excuse me. So we are currently sitting at 272 subscribers on our YouTube channel as of when we're doing this interview. If we can get to 300, as soon as we get to 300, I'm going to give this away. Stipulation going to be when you go subscribe over on our YouTube channel, I'm going to post a photo of this on our socials, comment on whatever one it is that you prefer to do it on, that you've done it, send a screenshot that you've done it, whatever. Let me know what your username is so at least I can track it. Please, please, please don't be the idiot who wants to win something for the sake of fucking winning something. If you don't live near a place that has a Wawa, please don't try to win this because that defeats the whole purpose of this. So basically all you got to do, just go over there. When we hit 300 subscribers and you basically have done what I've asked and commented that you've done that and leave your username, I will pick out of those 28 people. I guess I could open it up to the other 300, but I'm going to just do it for this. So out of the 28, when you comment that, I will randomly pick someone to win this and I will send it. I almost want to do something cool. I don't know if Ross will agree to do this. I'm putting him on the spot currently. Maybe he will be gracious enough to let me pay for some like a 10% off or something like that, a coupon that I can give for Enjoy the Ride Records to kind of sweeten the deal a little bit.
Yeah, we can figure something out.
So let's do that. 300 subscribers. Let us know when you do it. Comment on the thing, and I'll get with Ross and come up with some kind of a thing that I can help pay for a coupon or something that you can use over at enjoytheriderecords.com on a record that you would like to purchase yourself. And so it's a win-win for everybody. So go do that. And this has been a lot of fun.
Go do that.
Yeah, go do that.
Wawa, by the way. Unfortunately, I also don't live near a Wawa. But
dude, I was so bummed when we went to Long Island, and I was like, God, I gotta be fucking near one now. And I was like, no. And I was like, this is so stupid.
A couple times I was on tour is my only Wawa experience. I think Pennsylvania maybe has.
Yep, Pennsylvania has them. That's basically where they started, was Wawa, Pennsylvania. It's so sad how much of their story I know. There's actually apparently a documentary that's being worked on called Sheetz versus Wawa, like a convenience store, whatever.
You have a tattoo.
And so I showed them a photo of my tattoo, and they're like, "Can we use this? Can we use this in potentially in the documentary and so forth?" And I was like, "Absolutely." And last I checked, like that is no closer to being done. But I mean, what in like the day and age of like the King of Kong and stuff like that, like I feel like that is going to be such a wild ass documentary because like people are so loyal to one or the other. It's like people are so diehard about Sheetz or so diehard about Wawa that like when you like my wife put on my Wawa hoodie one day outside of a show because she was cold, and this kid walks by, he's like, fuck yeah, fuck. She was like, fuck Sheets, Wawa's the shit. And she just kind of looked at me and was like,
what?
Yeah, exactly. And then I was like, yeah, when you wear that, that's serious business. Like you're claiming like I'm not saying it's on the level like Crips and Bloods, but like you're choosing a specific thing, and you got to like take the responsibility of that. And it's definitely a brand loyalty thing. And so I'm very much appreciative of Wawa sending me all the stuff that they did.
Have you had Wegmans?
What was that?
You ever had Wegmans?
I have. It has been a very long time. I always loved, and I know they haven't had the podcast on for a while. The Andy from ETID podcast that he does with Jesse, and they constantly talk about Wegmans and Sheets because Andy's like, fuck Wawa, Sheets is a shit, blah blah blah, and I'm always like, Andy, I love you so much, but like you're wrong.
There's no Wegmans around here either, but I went to Buffalo for college, and like they're all up there, and like it is magical. It is a magical place. It's like an amusement park mixed with a supermarket. Not really, but like
no, I get what you mean.
You just get stoned and walk around. There's like a train going around the store, and candy that like you weigh your own candy and just make a random assortment bag, and just like all these little sections that all have crazy shit in it.
Did you ever go to the Pink while you were in Buffalo?
To where?
The Pink?
No, what's that?
It's a bar. It's like the diviest dive bar. Like it has been named one of the top 10 dive bars in the entire U.S.
I never really went to the city that much.
Okay.
Generally near campus and like downtown of campus. I went downtown. I went to the city a couple times, but 2 shows, but never really hung out down there. It was kind of far from us. I went to Buffalo, not Buff State. Buff State's kind of closer.
Yeah, I was gonna say when I went, like obviously being a big ETID fan, like all I've ever heard is the Pink, the Pink, the Pink, the Pink. And I finally went, and we went every day that we were there. And it is a shithole, but in the greatest, nicest sense. And then the day after the season, we went just to go have drinks and shit. And then Steve from ETID was there and telling wildly inappropriate stories. And I was like, I know this is your home bar, but dude, like this time of year probably isn't the time to be telling some of the stories you're telling and naming the names that you're naming, because like if I wanted to like say some shit right now, like I could definitely be like, oh, would you like to hear a story about XXXX people from these bands who did some very wildly inappropriate things? Because I heard straight from the source.
Yeah.
But thanks again for doing this, and I'm sure we'll be in touch. And for those listening to the audio version, we will see you on Sunday with whoever we have at that point.
Cool. See you, dude.
Sounds good. See ya.